Why was the dog staring at the storm drain? When it opened, what was inside it that left everyone surprised? In lots of countries, stray dogs are a common occurrence, but it was this one heroic dog in particular that fascinated many people by his incredible actions. In Turkey, a shaggy and dirty stray dog was walking down the street. It was a common occurrence for him to do this on a daily basis as he scavenged for any food or water that he could find. The day had started out like normal, with the dog happily trotting down the road, wagging his tail at anyone who looked his way. The dog was very friendly and loved to get pets off of people passing by. As the animal made his way down one particular street, he suddenly smelt something delicious. He followed his nose until he found himself standing in front of a butcher's shop. Just looking through the window at the food made the dog realize how hungry he was and caused his stomach to let out a loud growl. Inside the shop, a young woman called Emma was finishing paying for a couple of large steaks. Once she was done, she thanked the butcher and made her way out of the shop. As she stepped out of the shop, she heard a loud bark and a whimper. The confused young woman turned around and saw that the stray dog was looking back at her with very sad eyes. The dog's stomach growled. Emma felt bad seeing the cute but very skinny dog standing there. She looked down at the steaks that she'd just bought before marching back into the butcher's and asking for any cut-offs or bones that the man wouldn't sell. The butcher happily gave the woman what she wanted. Emma exited the shop and looked around for the stray dog. She soon found him watching her from a distance. The woman crouched down on the floor and carefully held out the bone that she'd gotten for him. At first, the dog was cautious and didn't want to get too close to the woman. But the longer that she held the food out to him, the less the animal could resist creeping closer to get the meal. Finally, Emma managed to gain enough of the animal's trust that he started wagging his tail and accepted the large bone off of her. But instead of eating the food right there and then, the dog picked it up and began walking off quickly, as if he had somewhere to be. Emma got confused, but not wanting to question it too much, Emma simply stood back up and made her way back home. The next day, Emma was walking down the street when she noticed the same stray dog from yesterday. The animal seemed to have noticed her as well and came happily bounding up to the woman with its tail wagging. Emma smiled at the dog's enthusiasm for her and began to fuss over him. Unfortunately, the young woman had places to be, so she couldn't spend too much time with the animal. She gave some leftovers from her bag, which was enough to feed the dog, but once again, the dog didn't eat them straight away and instead walked off again. Emma was getting more curious about the animal's behavior, as it seemed very evident that the dog's purpose of getting food had a reason different than she thought prior. However, she didn't have time to follow him and had to go about her day instead. On the third day, Emma was curious about the dog's behavior, so she went back on the same street where she saw him the 2 days before, only this time to find him sitting there, pointing toward her, as if he knew she was coming to see him. The woman had started carrying treats in a bag in the hope that she would be able to give them to the poor dog. She smiled and approached the dog to give him the treats. When the dog turned around and walked away, Emma followed him. They eventually came to a busy street, and there she saw the shaggy dog sit down next to the storm drain and look down into it. He then dropped one of the treats that Emma had just given him into it before eating his own. The young woman was very confused. What was the dog doing? Was this where the dog dropped the other food as well? A honking car startled her, and then Emma looked at the place where she just saw the dog again. She noticed the dog wasn't there anymore. Emma decided to come back the next day. Her gut told her that she was up to something important, and indeed, the next day she again found the animal drop half of the food into the drain before eating his own share. It was time. Emma decided to take a look for herself. Emma crept over to the storm drain, looked down into it, and gasped at what she saw. Immediately, the young woman reached for her phone and called the fire department and told them what she saw. Half an hour later, a couple of firemen showed up and quickly got to work. The fireman opened the storm drain up and took out 5 tiny kittens and held them in his arms. All the bystanders were shocked. At that moment, the stray dog bounded over to the fireman who had the kittens. As soon as the dog saw the small baby creatures, he immediately began to wag his tail and sniff at them. The kittens mewed back at the dog as a sign of recognition. The fireman told Emma that it was likely that they were swept into the drain during a heavy rain. As they were trapped, they weren't starving. After hearing this, Emma looked over at the stray dog. She knew that it was thanks to him for sharing his food every day. After seeing such a kind act of selflessness, she told the fireman that she would like to adopt these kittens. The fireman agreed and gave the kittens to Emma. The young woman then began to make her way back home. Before leaving, she turned around and called the stray dog, saying, "Come on, Brian, it's time to go home," naming the dog for the very first time. The dog, now Brian, happily bounded up to her. They felt like a team, like a family, and from here on, the family lived happily together. So this is it. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Till then, see you in our next video.